This shouldn't be legal, but in Japan, it is. What if everyday actions you'd get fined or arrested for are completely normal somewhere else? From laws that protect silence to rules that almost don't exist at all, Japan operates on a system that feels familiar until it suddenly doesn't. And the deeper you go, the more uncomfortable the contrast becomes. Because one of these is something you've probably done yourself. 10. No law against public sleeping. It looks like exhaustion, but in Japan, it's almost respected. People sleeping on sidewalks, benches, even inside busy train stations isn't treated as suspicious behavior. In fact, it has a name, inamure, or being present while sleeping. And unlike many countries where public sleeping can be associated with homelessness or disorder, Japan treats it differently. Here's the contrast. In cities like New York or London, sleeping in public spaces can result in fines, removal, or police questioning. It's often linked to vagrancy laws or public safety concerns, but in Japan, context matters more than the act itself. If someone is sleeping in a suit surrounded by a briefcase or work bag, the assumption isn't danger. It's overwork. It signals dedication, not disorder. And that shift in perception changes everything. Because the law doesn't need to intervene when society already understands the behavior. There's no widespread criminalization of public sleeping because it's not seen as a threat, which creates a strange reality. Something that would immediately raise concern in other countries barely registers here. And that raises a deeper question. How much of what we consider illegal is really just cultural interpretation? 9. No strict laws against pocket knives. It's small, practical, and in many places, completely banned. Carrying a pocket knife, even a tiny one, can get you into serious trouble in countries like the UK or parts of Europe. Blade laws are strict, and intent often doesn't matter. But in Japan, the situation is more nuanced. Small knives are not automatically illegal. Many people carry them for everyday purposes, opening packages, cutting materials, or even as part of traditional craftsmanship tools. However, here's the key detail. It's not about possession, it's about intent and size. As long as the blade falls within legal limits and isn't being carried suspiciously, it's generally tolerated. There's no immediate assumption of danger. Compare that to countries where even a small blade can trigger legal consequences, regardless of context. Japan's approach reflects something deeper. Instead of banning the object entirely, it regulates behavior around it, which creates a system based on trust, rather than restriction. And that trust changes how laws are enforced, and how people behave under them. 8. Drinking in public spaces. In most countries, this is a quick way to get fined. Open a drink on a public street, and you're likely breaking the law. Public consumption of alcohol is restricted in many parts of the world to control disorder, noise, or safety risks. But in Japan, it's different. Drinking in parks, on sidewalks, even during festivals or casual gatherings is completely normal. There are no widespread laws banning public alcohol consumption. And yet, the chaos you might expect doesn't happen. Why? Because behavior, not the act, is what's controlled. Public drunkenness that causes disruption can still lead to consequences. But simply drinking outside isn't treated as a problem, which creates a unique balance. Freedom exists, but it's quietly regulated by social expectation rather than strict legal enforcement. And that leads to something unusual. A rule that doesn't exist because it doesn't need to. 7. Operating cafes with animals. It sounds harmless until you realize what's inside. In Japan, animal cafes go far beyond cats and dogs. You'll find spaces dedicated to owls, hedgehogs, reptiles, even exotic species that would face strict limits or outright bans in many other countries. At first glance, it feels like a novelty, something unusual but harmless. But here's where the contrast begins to sharpen. In many parts of the world, animal welfare laws make this kind of close public interaction difficult to approve. Concerns around stress, Unnatural environments and constant human contact often lead to heavy restrictions, or complete prohibition. The assumption is simple: animals aren't meant to be part of rotating, high-contact public experiences. Japan approaches it differently. These cafes are legal, operating under guidelines that focus on enclosure standards, operating hours, and general care. Customers can sit near animals, observe them closely, and in some cases, interact under supervision. It's not unregulated, but it is far more flexible than what many countries would allow. And that flexibility creates something unusual: a space where something globally debated becomes part of everyday culture. Because the law here doesn't ask whether the concept should exist, it asks how it can exist without crossing a line. 6. Legal proxy parking. Owning a car isn't the hard part. Proving where you'll park it is. In Japan, before you can even register a car, you must show proof of a legal parking space. This is called a shako shomei, means parking certificate. Sounds strict, right? Here's where it gets interesting. You don't actually have to own the parking space. You can legally rent or use someone else's registered space, even if it's not directly tied to your residence. As long as documentation is provided, the system accepts it. Now compare that to many countries. In places like parts of Europe or North America, falsely registering parking or using proxy addresses for vehicle registration can lead to fines, penalties, or even fraud charges. But Japan structures it differently. The law focuses on ensuring a space exists, not necessarily who owns it, which creates a flexible system that still solves congestion. And that flexibility changes behavior. Instead of banning the workaround, Japan builds it into the system. 5. Adult adoption for business continuity. This isn't about family, it's about survival. In Japan, businesses, especially family-run ones, sometimes adopt adults to carry on the company, name, and legacy. This practice, known as mukoyoshi, allows a non-blood individual to legally become part of the family. In many countries, adoption laws are strictly tied to child welfare, while adult adoption either doesn't exist or is heavily restricted. But in Japan, it serves a different purpose. If a business owner has no suitable heir, they can adopt a capable adult, often an employee or trusted individual, to continue operations. And it's completely legal, which creates a system where identity can shift for economic continuity. It's not emotional, it's structural, and that challenges the idea of what family legally means. 4. Selling expired food. It feels wrong the moment you hear it. Expired food being sold on purpose. In many countries, this is strictly illegal. Once a product passes its expiration date, it must be removed from shelves. Selling it can lead to fines, business penalties, or even shutdowns due to health regulations. But Japan treats this differently. Here's the key detail. Japan distinguishes between best before quality dates and actual safety risks more clearly than many countries. Some stores legally sell items past their best before date, as long as they are properly labeled and still considered safe to consume. And there are even specialty discount shops built around this concept. Instead of discarding everything immediately, the system allows controlled resale to reduce waste. Now compare that globally. In many places, businesses don't have that flexibility. Even if the food is still safe, selling it after the labeled date can violate consumer protection laws. Japan's approach shifts the responsibility slightly. It informs the customer instead of outright banning the sale, which creates a surprising outcome. Is something considered unsafe or even illegal elsewhere is managed through transparency instead of prohibition. 3. Legal interrogations without a lawyer present. This is where things get uncomfortable. In many countries, the moment you're detained, you have the right to have a lawyer present during police questioning. Denying that can make the entire interrogation illegal, and any confession unusable in court. But in Japan, the system works differently. Police can legally interrogate suspects without a lawyer in the room. You can request legal counsel, yes, but they are not allowed to sit beside you during questioning. Interrogations can last for extended periods, and suspects are often questioned repeatedly over days. And here's the critical detail. Confessions play a major role in the justice system. Now compare that globally. In places like the United States or parts of Europe, questioning a suspect without access to a lawyer present can violate constitutional or human rights protections. But in Japan, it's part of the legal structure. The assumption isn't that the system is unfair, it's that the process itself is controlled, which creates a striking contrast. Something that would be considered a serious legal violation elsewhere is completely lawful here. 2. Legal possession of certain stimulant-like energy products. It looks like a normal energy drink, but the ingredients tell a different story. In Japan, some over-the-counter energy tonics and supplements contain high concentrations of stimulants or compounds that, in other countries, would be tightly controlled, or even banned without prescription. These products are sold in convenience stores, pharmacies, and vending machines. Completely legal. Now, compare that globally. In many countries, substances that affect alertness or mimic stimulant effects fall under strict drug or pharmaceutical regulations. Selling them freely, especially in potent doses, can violate health and safety laws, but Japan regulates them differently. Instead of banning the ingredient outright, it controls dosage, labeling, and classification, allowing certain formulations to remain legal for public sale, which creates a subtle but important difference. The same type of substance that might require a prescription or be illegal elsewhere is accessible here with far fewer barriers. And that raises a bigger question. Where exactly is the line between medicine and everyday consumption? 1. Legal. Hostage justice, detention system. This doesn't feel like a loophole. It feels like pressure. In Japan, suspects can be detained for up to 23 days without formal charges, and this can be extended through rearrests on related allegations. During this time, interrogations happen repeatedly, often with limited external contact, and it's completely legal. Now, compare that globally. In many countries, holding someone for extended periods without charge violates constitutional protections or human rights laws. In places like the United States or much of Europe, suspects must typically be charged or released within a much shorter time frame. But Japan's system is structured differently. The extended detention period is used to build a case before formal charges are filed, rather than after, which creates a very different dynamic, because time itself becomes part of the investigation, and that's where the tension builds. Something that would be considered unlawful detention elsewhere is built directly into the legal process here. Some rules don't change across the world, but others, they completely flip depending on where you are. Japan doesn't just follow laws, it redefines how they work, and once you notice the differences, it's hard to unsee them. Because the real question isn't what's legal or illegal, it's why we decided it should be that way at all.